Okay, people. Wait a minute, because Lorena is joining us too. This is what we discussed last class, right? Especially, we discussed the role of tasks in our teaching practices and the importance of interaction and what interaction means and what discourse means, remember? And everything, the basis of everything, the foundation of everything, of all these concepts, has to do with language, right? Our point of view of, not point of view, sorry, our view of language, what we understand by language. And we made the difference between language as, or language focusing on form, and language as a communication, right? When we think of language as a way of communicating, as a way of constructing meaning, building meaning, constructing discourse, creating, sorry, discourse, right? So so far, these are the theoretical underpinnings that are going to help us move on, right? And this should be very clear for us. That's why we've analyzed 2 videos. We've analyzed the kind of tasks that were presented here. And as you can see here, there was, I suggested you to read these complementary articles, right? Or chapters that are here in this folder, right? One is by Cameron, the other by Rod Ellis, Noonan, Cameron, Banton Braden, right? Remember these? Okay, so all these bibliography refers to tasks. And then there was another chapter that I added and I asked you to read. That is this one on language and discourse. And this is the one on written by Dere Bianca, right? And this has to do with the view of language from a functional perspective, right? Language as a social function, the importance of language as a way of, or as a tool to create discourse in a very specific context with a very specific purpose. Remember all these ideas that we discussed last class? Do you remember this? Okay.
Yes.
Yes, good. Within this chapter, we read about the importance of context, and also we read about the differences or the layers, the functions related to field, tenor, and mode. We said that field has to do with ideas, the tenor has to do with the interpersonal relationships, right? That means the audience, the person whom I'm talking to, and then the mode has to do with the channel of communication. All right?
Yes.
Clear so far?
Yeah.
Good, very good. And then another aspect that you read about has to do with genre, the meaning of genre, but not genre from the traditional point of view. Again, genre from a functional point of view, genre as a social activity. And after that, well, there were, so have a go, or tasks for you, tasks and examples for you to check. Two more concepts were introduced, which were the context of culture and the context of situation. Okay?
Yes.
Good. More examples for you to analyze, and then
Anna,
summary. Yes.
I have a doubt with context of culture and context of situation. The text says that in context of situation, we have the register, that the register is the combination of field, tenor, and mode.
Good.
And then we have context of culture and we have genre there.
Mhm.
So the context of situation would be inside the context of culture, or
Yes, exactly. Because have a look at this.
okay.
Have a look at this. Wait, because I want to this zoom. Let's zoom the right. As you can see here in
Yes.
this figure shows you the language system with its functions and meta functions, right? We are talking about some meta functions of language. This is kind of tricky too, because we are using, think about this, we are using language to talk about language, right?
Yes.
So this is difficult sometimes. So the idea is that the context of situation defines the context of situation defines register. What is register? Is this interplay between field, tenor, and mode. And then we define what field, tenor, mode is, okay? But then
Yes.
the context of situation is defined or is within a wider context, which is the context of culture that has to do with genre. Okay, so we need to think of
Yes.
genre, and within genre the register. All right, now
Yes.
Yes, the context of culture within, for example, in our case, the school community, right? Or it could be.
okay, but it's wait, because it's not just culture from the point of view of culture as we think about it. Let's
Yes, I understood, and it called my attention because when you talk about culture, you relate the concept to the custom, the traditions, and such and such. But in this case, is include all the social purposes.
That's it.
Within a community.
Exactly, right? Have a look at here. It says in figure 1.3, we see that the context can be viewed from the perspective of the overarching cultural context, or from the perspective of a specific situation that occurs within the culture, and that has to do with the register, right? So when we talk about context of culture, we think of genre. And whenever we think of genre, we need to think about register, okay? So culture is not,
Yes.
as Lorena explained, is not the idea of the traditions, right? Or it has to do with a very specific perspective and situation. Okay?
Anna, I think in page 7, it's very clear, the first paragraph, when it says genre, it explains the difference between context of culture and context of situation.
Okay, let's see if I can find page 7, you tell me?
7, yeah, page 7, when it says genre, the very
Here.
first paragraph. Yeah.
Yes.
You
At
know
the
what?
beginning, yes.
Somebody is putting these squares, right? So try not to include, not to modify the texts, people, right? Because these white squares covers part of the reading. I don't know why they appear there. So Nati, can you read the part? Can you read the section
Yes.
where you find the difference?
Yes, because it says, okay, we need to consider the relationship between language and the broader concept of culture. The language system involves within the context of a certain culture, including beliefs, values, and behaviors. I think this is the key words, okay, that I underlined, because it's not too general, because it includes, okay, beliefs, values, and behaviors. And then, okay, our language choices will therefore be sensitive to the cultural context as well as the context of a particular situation within that culture. So I think this is the difference that we were talking.
Okay,
But I
exactly.
underline that.
That's perfect. That's perfect, Nati. Right? You are kind of summing up. You are kind of summing up what Lore said, right? Which is perfect, right?
Because and then it says,
yeah,
no, sorry. When we refer to culture, it says we don't necessarily mean to national cultures that Australian, okay, Argentinian, or that. It's more let's say more open.
Okay, exactly. And then another word which I think is key here is this, our language choices. This word, our language choices will therefore be sensitive to the cultural context as well as the context of a particular situation. So the way, I mean, the wording and the syntax we choose to communicate, in order to create meaning, will depend on the culture and on the situation. Okay? So if we are thinking about the school, and then have a look at, there are some highlights here when it says context of culture, right? Then this idea here, it's important when it says depending on the discourse community, in our case, the discourse community of schooling, all right? So whenever we think of the context of culture, we need to think of the culture of schooling. What does it mean, the culture of schooling? Well, we are in a context, in a place, in a building that mean or symbolizes many things, right? And the language that we use at school, we as teachers and our students as pupils, right? It's not completely, that it's different from the language that they use at home. It's different from the language that they use when talking with friends or when talking with families, talking and communicating, I mean, okay? So the language of schooling, yes.
It's like adapting the language according to the situation and to the age of the person we are talking to.
Okay, that's it. That's it. You adapt. I mean, how do you adapt? By choosing the language, right? By choosing vocabulary and by choosing syntax. Yes, Eileen.
When we speak, when we write, we change the register depending on the person who is listening to us or reading to us. But do we always change the genre?
Yes.
Too?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Yes. And because the register, Eileen, the register will depend on the genre. I mean, it's not that we change the genre. For example, in this case, what genre are we dealing with? In this case, what is it that I'm showing you on the screen, right? This is a chapter from a book, but is it I mean, the book, is it a novel? Does it belong to the creative writing area? No, this is academic. This is purely academic discourse. There are a lot of definitions. There are a lot of descriptions. There are no narrations. There's no narration here. There's description and definitions, and it's what we call expository text. This is expository text, right? So that this genre defines the register. Okay?
Yes.
Good. Right. So thinking about these concepts, shall we go on?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I got a question, but sure. I know yes, about the context of culture. Could the genre go beyond borders? For example, if you're talking about a situation that happened to adolescents, it could be a situation that happened in maybe most of the countries. Do you know what I mean?
No. Can you exemplify?
For example, if we talk about their feelings, yes, how do they feel when they get this difficult age, yes, in their lives. So the genre could be beyond borders, beyond. Is not the context is not an Argentinian situation or an Australian situation.
Exactly. The context, when we talk about context, we are not referring to physical or geographical context, right? We are not referring to that, right? It's the context of culture and situation, right? This goes beyond geographical borders. Now, what we can find that in, as regards teenagers, right? If we talk to teenagers here in Argentina, in United States, in Brazil, in India, they more or less, right, have suffered the same issues because they are teenagers, right? More or less, right? Because there are a lot of variables, but yes, because a teenager living in Buenos Aires, in Cava, is completely different from and communicates in a different way from a teenager who lives in, I don't know, Tierra del Fuego, right? In a small town, in Tolwyn, for example. Tolwyn is one of the cities, right, or villages in the south of Argentina. So, of course, everything, I mean, everything makes up for these contexts, right? But as Lore says, they go beyond that. When we talk about these interplay, the idea of the concept of genre, the concept of register, the meta functions of the language, they go beyond just the physical aspect. Okay, it's not the local context only. Good. I like these discussions and this exchange of ideas, right? They are much more enriching. Okay, so and then once we covered everything that has to do with language, discourse, tasks, whatever, we come to a concept which is very specific, which is the concept of scaffolding. The importance of scaffolding when we talk about tasks. If we talk about tasks within our teaching practices, we need to talk about scaffolding, right? So the reading assignment has to do with 3 chapters. The 3 of them deal with scaffolding, and some of them, especially the first one, also discusses genre, field tenor, and mode. Okay, good. Any questions from these chapters? No? Good.
Yes.
Okay, Juan.
Yes, I have one. I couldn't understand. Let me check. When it says context embedded and context reduced.
Okay, in which you would have to remember remind me.
Yes, I would say. Let me. Okay.
Which chapter? 1, 5.
Chapter 1.
Chapter 1.
Yes, I will. Let me check. I'm checking. In page 9. The second paragraph.
Let's turn now to Juliana. No. No.
Line 24.
Pardon?
Page 9.
Yes.
Page
Here.
9.
Yeah, here it says.
Line 24.
Okay, let's return to Juliana because the chapter starts with an example. Remember, it says the students quoted at the beginning of the chapter, where the visual context provides support for meaning making and where fewer linguistic resources are required. Okay, Cummings, 2000, uses the terms context embedded and context reduced to refer to the distinction between the registers of everyday language and the more academic registers of school, and has suggested that whereas a second language learner is likely to develop conventional language quite rapidly, usually taking between 1 and 2 years, the registers associated with academic learning may take up to 7 years for the learner to develop at a level equivalent to a competent native speaker of the same age. That means you develop the ability to create discourse, to communicate, to use language. What kind of language? Everyday language, very quickly. Why? Because we are exposed to, right? Because, I mean, not in our context, not in Argentina, right? But generally, when you learn a foreign language, right? In Europe, in United States, I mean, you are exposed to different situations where you need to use that language outside the academic context. So the everyday language, the language you use, or even us, I mean, think about when we listen to dialogues, when we watch movies or when we watch series. So we pick up very quickly everyday language, right? And the other that has to do with context reduced, with the reduced of the context, has to do with the academic language, right? The academic learning. That takes longer, right? That takes longer. So the school-related registers, right, are more explicit and more abstract, right? They are less personal, as it says here, right? They are less personal. So they contain more specific language. So the difficulty lies in that we need to help students to develop that kind of language, because it's the language that then they are going to use to learn, to go on learning. Okay?
Yes.
Okay, then anyway, Juan, we are coming back to this topic again in the second part of the class, okay? Remember that if communication breaks, we are going to use the same link to join the meeting again, okay? But as we have only 9 minutes, I want now you to watch and listen to this video, right? Hope everybody can listen to.
Now, yes.
Okay, tell me if you do not listen, just tell me. So there are like 4 minutes, because then we are going to work with this video, okay? We are going to work in small groups with this video. The dot. By Peter H. Reynolds. Is the volume okay?
No.
No?
A bit higher.
A bit higher, please.
I can't make it because it's 100% in the computer and in.
Okay.
At least, can you at least listen a little bit? Yes? Art class was over, but Vashti sat glued to her chair. Her paper was empty. Vashti's teacher leaned over the blank paper. Ah, a polar bear in a snowstorm, she said.
Very funny, said Vashti. I just can't draw. Her teacher smiled. Just make a mark and see where it takes you. Vashti grabbed a marker and gave the paper a good, strong jab. There. Her teacher picked up the paper and studied it carefully. She pushed the paper toward Vashti and quietly said, now sign it. Vashti thought for a moment. Well, maybe I can't draw, but I can sign my name. The next week, when Vashti walked into art class, she was surprised to see what was hanging above her teacher's desk. It was the little dot she had drawn, her dot, all framed in swirly gold. I can make a better dot than that. She opened her never-before-used set of watercolors and set to work. Vashti painted and painted. A red dot, a purple dot, a yellow dot, a blue dot. The blue mixed with the yellow. She discovered that she could make a green dot. Vashti kept experimenting. Lots of little dots in many colors. If I can make little dots, I can make big dots too. Vashti splashed her colors with a bigger brush on a bigger paper to make bigger dots. Vashti even made a dot by not painting a dot. At the school art show a few weeks later, Vashti's many dots were quite a splash. Vashti noticed a little boy gazing up at her. You're a really great artist. I wish I could draw, he said. I bet you can, said Vashti. Me? No, not me. I can't draw a straight line with a ruler. Vashti smiled. She handed the boy a blank sheet of paper. Show me. The boy's pencil shook as he drew his line. Vashti stared at the boy's squiggle, and then she said, sign it.
Beautiful.
Yes, it's a beautiful
Yes.
story, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well, the end. Okay. It's a beautiful story, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay. So now during the second part of the class, I'm going to send you now I'm going to send you the link so I do not wait. I do not forget. Oy. In our chat, you would find the link right to the video, because now in our during the second part of our class, what you are going to do is to work with this video, and you are going to think of scaffolding activities, scaffolding instances to present this story to students. If you read the chapters, if you understood what scaffolding is, you should be able to come up with ideas on how to scaffold students' approach to the story. Okay, this is the dot.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
No, it's okay. This is the dot, right? This is the story. And you are the teacher who goes to class and it says, and you are going to use this material. This is input. This is input. You're going to use this material to your primary school kids. Let's see, 5th year primary school. 5th year primary school means 10, 11 years old. How are you going to deal with that? Your coordinator at school told you, and wait, this is, again, let's think about the context in general. This is a state-run school, primary school. You have 20 kids at school, and you have to deal with this. What do you do? Right? One class. What do you do with this? Okay.
Okay. So remember the reminds me. Sorry, the age of the student 10 or 11.
10, 11. You have a group of 20, 10, 11-year-old boys and girls.
Okay, 5th or 6th grade.
Okay,
right.
That is, yes.
Good.
So the idea is, this is the input, this is the material you need to use. How would you start a class? So you need to think of the concept of task, discourse, language, genre, register, and definitely scaffolding, right?
Lovely, yes.
Okay. This is what teachers do. This is what teachers do, right? So now concentrate, preferably concentrate on scaffolding. Of course, you need to take everything else into account, but concentrate on scaffolding. What would you do for your kids to have access to this? What would you do? How would you help them? Okay. Yes, good. So the communication breaks, you use the same link, and we start, I'll divide you in different groups, okay? Good.